the actual cases we get of split personalities is never quite as neat as that. That's my impression. That with the real cases of split personality that have actually been documented, there's always one personality that's in charge and the others tend to know about each other to a greater or lesser extent. What was it? Miss B said, well, but at the same time, it is always me. And there's some sense in which you hang on to a kind of psychological unity here anyhow. But the case in which you really do have split personality, in which you had a kind of, let's just make up a case, in which you really seem to have split personality within the same body, that's a real hard question for my view, yeah, that says the self is physical. And I don't wish to try and brush that aside right now. Yeah, we will come back to that. Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah. I'm using them completely synonymously, yeah. I'm happy to be called out on that. You might say you want some distinctions here. The question is just which distinctions?
I know that you said the connection of the self has to be a physical thing, and therefore the mind is also a physical thing.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if you were making a distinction between the self being a physical thing as my body and then my mind also being a separate physical thing that's separate from my body.
I was not making a distinction there, but there may well be a case to be had for saying that I should. Yeah. So, yeah, that is a very good point. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And it's possible for them to come apart? Yeah, sure. Yes. So, yeah, I think these questions about survival and so on are really interesting. I think Descartes speaks as though people who believe that the self continues beyond the existence of the body, yeah, sometimes write and talk as if the way it goes is you look inside your mind and you find something there made of a particularly durable material. Yeah, so that's obviously, look at it. That's obviously going to last a lot longer than the body, right? As if that was the reasoning. But, of course, that is not what goes on. It is not that you look inside your own mind, encounter the self, and find it to be particularly durable. What happens is a much more primal thing, that we find it genuinely difficult to comprehend our own death. Yeah, we find it very hard to think that through. I mean, what is in the other side? Yeah, I mean, in trying to imagine that, all you do is imagine life going on a bit longer. You see what I mean? You just cannot get your mind around imagining what's on the other side. There really seems to be something incomprehensible about that. And that seems to be a basic limitation on imaginative thinking. There's just a wall there. You just can't get around that, yeah? And I think because of that, because imaginative thinking has that, a friend of mine, her aunt once said to her, you can't really believe that when you die, that's it. Nobody really believes that. And, I mean, I don't agree, but I know what she means. But it's hard to get your head around. And I think what happens is that people say, I just find this incomprehensible, my own death. I can't imagine that. Therefore, the self must be some hard crystalline thing that goes on. And that's part of what's seductive about Descartes' argument. Because the idea is, well, even if all the physical stuff wasn't there, I would still know about the self. That's the hard crystalline thing that goes on and on and on. Yeah? But that's just a bit of mythology. The actual ground floor fact is you can't have an imaginative understanding of your own death. Or, I mean, this is a little bit, the other thing you said, which is also very good, is it's hard to get your head around the world before you were born. Yeah, you know, what was that? How was it then? It's in a way, it's subtler, but it's just as hard, really, as the world after your death. And that connects to the question, in imaginative thinking, do you get the conditions of the existence of the thing whose mind, the mind you're trying to imagine? And what I was suggesting was you don't. It's when you let imaginative thinking take on a life of its own that all this seems so powerful, and you start thinking, well, there's got to be something like that there. Yeah. But when you say, no, in imaginative thinking, I'm always reflecting on what's going on with a particular human being. And of course, human beings come into existence and go out of existence. That's when it gets easy. That's when you see how it could be possible. But that's not the end of the story, because it's also true that we find it very hard. I mean, if imaginative thinking was really just controlled by your physical thinking, then there wouldn't be that kind of limitation in imaginative thinking, that you can't encompass your own death. So there's a real tension between imaginative thinking and physical thinking here. Yeah, and that's part of why the stuff about the mind is so hard. That's a particularly poignant case where reflecting on the relation between the mind and the physical is so difficult. Okay, we're just on time. Terrific questions. Thank you, guys. And we'll look at Ryle on Friday.